welcome to another edition of the Columbus Wired Ohio State postgame recap. I'm Andy Evans. Got my boy from the Delaware Gazette, Mr. Dillon Davis, coming in to hang out to do this one. And yeah, you may notice that unfortunately we are down a man today. The second D of the show, Mr. Drew Sample. Dillon, he decided to go party in Kentucky last night, so he's not here, but he wanted me to tell you and everybody else out there, the one or two viewers that we have of this show, that he sends his regards, and he called it yesterday. And what did he call? Well, he called that the fourth-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes would defeat the third-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions in Beaver Stadium on Saturday afternoon. And Dillon, that's exactly what Buckeye Nation just got, as the Buckeyes were victorious by a final score of 20-13. Just give me your thoughts, man. What did you see yesterday?
Oh, man. First of all, what a roller coaster of emotions that game was. I'm sure for Buckeye fans everywhere. It was a really fun game. Look, I'll be the first to happily admit that I was one of the biggest skeptics of this Ohio State offensive line, and for good reason. I still maintain that. I mean, anybody had every reason to question whether that offensive line could go to Penn State and win that game on Saturday. There's just nothing that we had seen previously that would or should at least build confidence in that. But the bottom line is they went out and got the job done. And I was absolutely stunned in that final drive when they took over at the 1 yard line, in the shadow of their own goal line with the Penn State student section at their back. I was just absolutely stunned. The way an Ohio State offensive line, just as Donovan Nutt said, dropped their nuts and said they were going to go win a game. And did. They just went out and imposed their will. They pushed Penn State around in the line of scrimmage and milked 5 minutes off the clock. It was just a stunning drive. It was a stunning turn of events to see everything we talked about this week and everything that that we were worried about or was a concern, or the biggest reasons why I thought personally they would lose the game in a close one, but lose the game. That same concern just went out and won the game for them in the final minutes of the game. 5 minutes. That's an eternity to bleed off the clock against the Penn State defense that A, was a top 10 rushing defense, and B, knew you were going to run the football, and there was nothing they could do about it. It reminded me of the 2021 Ohio State-Michigan game where Michigan just said, it doesn't matter if you know we're going to run the ball. You can't stop it. We're stronger. We're more physical than you. We're tougher than you. And they were. And that's what happened in the final 5 minutes of that game. And that was stunning to me that played out, because I never in a million years thought that I would come away from this game saying Ohio State's offensive line was more physical and won the battle consistently against Penn State's defensive line and rushing attack. I thought Ohio State could win the game in a lot of ways. I didn't think they would, but I thought they could in different ways. Never would it have been me talking about the offensive line. Now, we'll talk about this later. Let's pump the brakes on calling this Ohio State offensive line good or anything better than good, because they still had their issues. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They had to win this football game to keep their dreams alive and keep everything they want to do, on track. And they went and did that. And I was so proud of the Ohio State, football team yesterday as a Buckeye fan.
You look at the last 10 minutes and change of that game. Penn State puts together their longest drive of the game as far as yardage was concerned. It was like a 9-play, 74-yard drive, ate up 5 minutes of the clock, and they came away with 0 points. In fact, there's another stat for you, Dillon. Penn State had 3 red zone trips, came away with only 1 score, and it was a field goal, and Ohio State able to force them into that 4-and-out on the downs after eating up 5 minutes of the clock in the fourth quarter, consuming, like I said, their longest yardage drive of the game. And the other unsuccessful red zone trip for the Nittany Lions resulted in an interception by our boy Davison Igbinosun, who kind of makes us do this at times. God, because he is a very physical corner, but it was ruled a touchdown. Then on review, they took it back and successfully awarded Ohio State the interception, and rightfully so, because, I mean, dude, was that not one of the greatest picks that you've seen probably this year, at least for Ohio State, is the fact that, first of all, he gets shoved in the face. Igbinosun gets shoved off by the receiver in the face and still pulls in the interception and gets his right foot down to secure it. I mean, was that not crazy or what?
Yeah, it was one of the more remarkable catches in general. Catches in general. If that would have been, if that same thing played out the opposite way and the receiver ends up coming down with the ball like that, you would say the same thing. So, and then in that moment too, just a massive moment in that game, a massive swing, which all that first half was a bunch of momentum swings, I swear, man.
The
So,
whole game was
yeah,
momentum
well,
swings.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, so let's break it down. Stat wise, Buckeyes 358 total yards, Penn State 270. On the ground, Ohio State 176 yards. It was once again one of those equal offensive games for Ohio State where they really split evenly. The yardage total 182 through the air, 176 on the ground. Will Howard, not one of his best games, but it's certainly, I mean, I don't know if you could technically say this was his worst game of the year. He was 67% complete, 182 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, both in the first half, both on subsequent offensive drives for the Buckeyes. However, he throws a pick six on his very first pass of the game, on Ohio State's very first offensive drive of the game, puts Penn State up 10-0. And I'm sure at that point, myself included, not sure what you were thinking at the time, but I'm like, okay, this is not a good way to start on the road in Happy Valley in a game like this, fronting Penn State 10 points like that. And I also told myself, long game. There was still like five some minutes left in the first quarter. I'm like, this is a long game, a lot of time left to recover, but still, this is not good. What were your thoughts as soon as Will Howard throws that pick six?
Well, certainly, Ohio State could have been taking the best offensive line it's ever fielded into that game. And if you start out falling into a 10-0 hole just minutes into that game in that environment or any environment that's equal to that, very, very concerning because if that crowd didn't need any more juice, and when Will Howard just sent a charge through that place with that pick six. And obviously, I in that moment, I kind of just, I thought, you know, I just watched Will Howard do the one thing. Ohio State did the one thing it couldn't do. Not only did they do it, but it also led directly to points. I didn't think if Ohio State was going to win that game, they could afford to turn the ball over at all. So in that moment, I'm not going to say that I thought it was over at all because that's not true. But I thought, this is as big a disaster, and it was. Frankly, it was as big a disaster as you could ever imagine for Ohio State to start this game. But then I said, and I don't know if this was this. I don't know if this made me feel better or not. But I said, look, I've only seen Ohio State run 3 offensive plays, and it's 10-0. Yeah, but I've only seen them run 3 offensive plays. I need to see more from this offense to know if what I suspected all week is true or not. And I can't judge that off of 3 plays. So, like everybody else, going into that next drive, it's a huge drive, and they went down and scored, and it settled that entire team down, settled Will Howard down. The offensive line showed that they can, that they can do something like that. They're not completely overwhelmed. And to me, that said a lot. And I thought to myself, okay, they're going to be okay in the sense that it's not going to spiral out of control like it can so easily in a place like Happy Valley with that crowd. And so that let me know that it wasn't going to spiral, that they were settled down. And then we'll see how the rest of the game goes. And certainly after they scored again, I realized that Ohio State's going to be able to move the ball semi-regularly today. And then that kind of threw everything I thought, my preconceived notions about this game all week out the window, and just watched it for what it was, and was continuously surprised from that point on.
See, now there you go. What I saw out of this Ohio State team yesterday was what we had been hearing, leading into the Oregon week, that they were practicing with an edge. This team was practicing with an edge. Didn't really see that edge out of the defense against the Ducks. Still kind of heard that edge, toughness narrative by Ryan Day going into Nebraska. This team's upset. They're angry. Of course, somewhat of an anomaly because they had to play a Nebraska team who had just gotten walloped by Indiana. So Nebraska was out to prove something, and I think they did. Even though Ohio State ultimately won the game, 21-17, still it was like this, hand wringing kind of like, is this the Ohio State team that we heard in early in the season that they were motivated and they were tired of the soft narrative and so on and so forth. And they lose to Oregon. Granted, it was a crazy 1 point loss. You went on the road to the number one, ultimately the number one ranked team in the nation. You only lost by a point in their house. A crazy place to play in the first place. You got to bye. Then you're taking on Nebraska. You only win by 4. So I think a lot of Buckeye fans are like, here we go again. Here we fricking go again. But yesterday I saw that edge. I saw that toughness and that grit and that resolve. And it was almost like Will Howard needed to throw that pick six to kind of get this team to maybe snap them and wake them up. He doesn't throw that pick six. I mean, who knows? Maybe they go down and score. Maybe their offense gets into a rhythm that way, and they go on and win this game 56-3. But it was almost like he needed to throw that pick six, maybe to wake up these guys and go, what the hell are we doing? Come on. We are better than this. Let's show some toughness, some grit, and some resolve. And like you just said, they then go down and score. After he throws a pick six, they immediately turn around, answer back, go on a 7-play, 74-yard drive, cap it off with that touchdown pass to Emeka Buka, wide open, great play call. And then they force Penn State to punt. And then what do? On the very next drive, they go back down the field and score again. And so at that point, all of a sudden, it's 14-10, and you're like, huh. Or no, I'm sorry. That was after the pick six, it was 10-0. They scored to make it 10-7. Then they scored again, to make it 14-10. I'm getting my drives confused. I apologize. But yeah, still, they showed toughness and resolve that immediately after the pick six, they went down and they answered back. So was this performance by Ohio State, and I know you're not ready, maybe you are, I'm not ready to necessarily jump on the bandwagon that, this team, they really are, the opposite of this Ohio soft narrative, and you guys are a bunch of finesse, wimpy guys. But this definitely gave me some more confidence now going, into an Indiana game that looks like it's going to be a Donnybrook. It gives me more confidence, though, that this team really does have that gritness and toughness to overcome an obstacle like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, this is a conversation for a different day, but I just don't believe that Indiana game is going to be as good a football game as a lot of people assume it's going to be.
Okay. I'm assuming you think that it's not going to be as good for Indiana as
yes,
maybe
correct.
Indiana.
But in terms of the offensive line, again, as I said a little bit ago, they did everything they needed to do to go win this game today or yesterday. But moving forward, people need to pump the brakes on assuming that Ohio State, now they check the box at offensive line as well, because all my skepticism about Ohio State winning this game in the days leading up to that game on Saturday was all centered around the offensive line. It was the only thing that I didn't have confidence in. It's the only thing I lost faith in terms of checking the boxes that it needs to go win a national championship. It's the only thing. But I'm still not going to sit here and say that they checked that box now as a national championship caliber offensive line. They played well enough to go win that game, but they didn't grade out all that well. Carson Hinsman graded out as the best offensive lineman, which I thought when I was watching it, I thought Carson Hinsman might have been the best of the bunch, and I'm happy to see that my eyes and the grades back each other up, because I thought he played really well. Donovan Jackson did not grade out well. Look, I understand the situation that he was in, and I get that. But the good news is he has 2 weeks of powder puffs before that Indiana game to settle in. I assume he's going to continue playing tackle. If there was any kind of change, I don't even know where I would start with that. But assuming he's going to continue to play tackle regardless of Zen's health, he has 2 more weeks. He'll have 3 starts under his belt going into that Indiana game. So that's good news, and he's going to get better. Obviously, he's playing a brand new position. He's only going to get better. But coming out of this game, didn't grade well. The offensive line overall didn't grade all that well. So let's just pump the brakes on, all of a sudden assuming Ohio State now has a national championship caliber offensive line, because, I think that there's a degree of you can kind of call out Penn State as maybe being softer or not what we thought they would be as well. And I hate to do that because this happens so often, especially in the Penn State game with Ohio State. It always seems like these Penn State teams come into these games, Ohio State beats them, and then everybody wants to discredit Penn State. And I hate that. But I think there is an element. I think it's absolutely fair to some degree this year to say that, hey, and I said it earlier this week, I said, no part of me thought Penn State is a top five football team, one of the five best teams in the country. No part of me. I've never been a Drew Aller believer. I say never. It's only a second year, but I just don't think that the guy's a difference maker. Now, granted, they have absolutely no talent. I mean, no talent whatsoever around him in terms of the skill positions. It's so bad for a program of that stature to have as bad of weapons. But I don't want to get off and I don't ramble here.
Tyler
But
Warren's a pretty good weapon.
well, yeah,
But they
okay.
underutilized him yesterday. They didn't use
If
him
you're
right.
if you're tight end and your running back combined for 10 catches and your receivers have three total elsewhere, that's a problem in any football team. I don't It's great to have a weapon at tight end. It can't be your one and only weapon. So,
Agreed.
but anyways, yeah, so this offensive line, look, it was they did what they had to do to win the game. That's awesome. That's all they needed to do, and I love that for them. But moving forward, let's pump the brakes and let's see how they continue to grow leading into Indiana. And look, I said it last week. That Michigan game is more interesting than I ever thought it would be 2 weeks ago if this offensive line is just average, because that's the strength of Michigan's team as well, their defensive line. So, let's see how they progress and going into that, and then we'll make a judgment if they are able to escape those two games. We'll make a judgment on what we think they have going into that Oregon game against the defensive line that I assume will probably be fully healthy, where it wasn't a few weeks ago, and that'll be the ultimate litmus test going into the playoff is, hey, how's this offensive line hold up against that? Because this is what they're going to see if they want to go win a national title. So we'll see. But all in all, today doesn't matter. Just the fact that they went and did what they needed to do today. Good news.
Well, and going back just a split second on the toughness thing, the fact that Will Howard throws a pick six and then he responds back. They respond back with a touchdown. The fumble that I hadn't yet mentioned in Will Howard's performance of being basically feast or famine yesterday. The fumble that was, I mean, at least from the replay I saw, it definitely, he knocked it right
Oh yeah,
pylon with his leg.
Yeah.
That's a touchback. I think the rule is stupid, which I saw, I was texting with friends, saw on social media. Everybody's complaining about the rule. It's unfortunate that is the rule. That rule needs to change, but it is what it is, right? However, what happens right after that? Penn State drives all the way down the field. In fact, I think that was like their no, it was like, I think their fourth longest drive of the game, not as far as time possession, but yardage wise or play wise. But nonetheless, they get the interception. Davison Igbinosun. And that was, one of the three failed, two of the three failed, one of the two failed red zone trips for Penn State out of the three total.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, they had three total with one
You know
field
what I
goal.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I got
But they get the interception, right? And stop Penn State from scoring. So that was a great answer, if you will. Even though they let Penn State drive all the way down the field, it still ends up as an interception. So you kept Penn State from scoring. So that was an answer, if you will. And then, yeah, like you said, dude, the final drive for Ohio State. They get the ball back with over 5 minutes to go in the game. I mean, that game was not in hand. It was, I mean, Ohio State was up by a touchdown, granted, but it still was not a for sure thing. They had to make sure that they were able to run out the clock, and they did. And they did it, Dillon, by running the freaking football. I mean, that final drive, and like you said, it was shades of Michigan against Ohio State 2021. And I stayed back home here in Columbus. I was watching the game with my family. My uncle was there. And he and I are looking at each other, and we were commenting, it was basically like the Woody Hayes, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You know what I'm going to do. I dare you to stop me. Just like you just said at the very beginning here, I dare you to stop me. You know what we're going to do. Go ahead and stop us. And Penn State couldn't do it. And that offensive line, that potentially could have been the best single drive performance maybe of the season so far. And I could be way off base. I'm sure there have been better offensive drives technically from a grading out standpoint. But just the fact that Ohio State ran the ball with conviction. They were opening up holes. I mean, they were opening up holes on that final drive that I hadn't seen open up the middle and off tackle all game long. Once again, call me crazy. I could have been seeing something completely different, and maybe just the fact that they were, they were running the ball with such conviction like they were. It just seemed that way, but I thought that was just an unbelievable show of grit, determination, and toughness by that Ohio State offense that maybe I hadn't seen up to that point all year long. So I
When
don't know. Is it me? Is
No,
it,
well, I just want to add this real quick because I thought it was funny. When you said that it was maybe the greatest drive of the season for Ohio State, um, driving home from Ohio, or going heading back to Ohio, I was talking to my dad about the game, and uh, and he uh, and he brought up obviously that drive. We were talking about the drive and just how it seemingly came out of nowhere and how improbable it was. I made the comment to him, when you factor everything into this game, what the stakes were, the literal stakes, Big Ten title spot on the line, playoff seeding, all these different things. And then you talk about what was on the line for the program, Ryan Day's future, the program's future by extension. And then you factor also in all the discourse about that offensive line and where it was at going into this game. It's probably one of my favorite drives in Ohio State history, because of everything that I just said factoring into it and how absolutely like out of nowhere it was and how improbable it was. If you'd have told anybody on Tuesday or Wednesday that was how that game was going to end on that drive, that kind of drive from that offensive line, and just nobody. I don't even. I'm not even sure the most it's always sunny in Columbus. Ohio State fans, I'm not even sure they would have bought that game would end on that drive. And frankly, not only was it one of my favorite, it might be one of the better drives in Ohio State history. Just single drives. If you take everything into it, and obviously, where the season goes would probably factor into that question, and it's a subjective, topic, anyways. But it might be one of the better drives in Ohio State history because of all that, what was riding on that drive and just how improbable it was, man. It just, frankly, was just like I said, it was just stunning. So I thought, it was funny you said that because I told my dad it's one of my favorite drives of all time in Ohio State history. It might be one of the better ones in their history in general. So yeah,
there's one drive that actually sticks out in my mind that I would argue was probably better than that one. 2016 double overtime,
yeah,
Michigan
yeah.
for the win, 4th and 1. JT Barrett to
Well,
this day.
yeah,
Did he or
right,
did
yeah,
he get
yeah,
it? But nonetheless, that was still for this season, and
right,
most definitely, I would say in probably the Ryan Day era,
yeah,
that could go down so far as
yeah.
one of the greatest single drives of his regime. So let's talk about his regime, Mr. Davis. Um, and you brought up James Franklin and Penn State, and maybe not so fairly calling Penn State soft, if you will. But I'm sorry. I'll give it up to Ryan Day, and I will definitely give it up to Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles for both of them calling great coming up with great offensive and defensive game plans, dude. To me, I thought Chip Kelly called a great game, and Jim Knowles did too. But it can maybe they take a little bit of non-credit and give a little bit of credit to James Franklin that he poops his pants when it comes to this game. He totally just drops a fat chunky turd in the toilet when it comes to playing Ohio State and playing in these big games, because I felt that Penn State they came out and they were going through the motions. First drive of the game, they drive all the way down the field. It's like a 14 play drive, took up like 8 minutes. It was like their best drive of the game by far. They cap it off with a field goal. Then they immediately turn around, pick six. Place is going nuts. And then just kind of after that, I don't know. I felt like there were times, and I know James Franklin even said this afterwards, like, we did some good things to win the game, but we did some good things we did. And of course, that's always going to be out there as far as coach speak is concerned. But it just felt to me like James Franklin just, once again, just kind of came with a blase attitude, or maybe even a little scared of playing in a big time game. So A lot of people make out Ryan Day, 2-7 against top five. And hell, James Franklin's record is even worse than Ryan Day's. So do we give like some credit to Ryan Day off of Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles? Or maybe do we kind of thank James Franklin a little bit for kind of being the coach that he is when it comes to that kind of game?
All the above.
Okay.
I mean,
The answer. All right. Moving along.
I mean, all that factors in. First off, real quick, I thought Chip was just pure brilliance in that game. I thought he solidified every reason that people thought that Ryan Day went out and got Chip Kelly for this specific offense. I thought it was just utterly brilliant what Chip Kelly did yesterday.
Those option plays, dude.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, that's
where
yeah.
the hell's this coming from? Those were great calls.
Yep, yep. So, just and they were well timed calls. Chip was just I mean in his bag yesterday. It was just it was a lot of fun to watch. And again, just every reason they went and got Chip. And Jim Knowles was solid as well, very solid as well. His defense is a couple of and then he got him, so I'm not. But his defense is a couple of stops going the other way from us talking about like, hey, that's not a good Penn State offense. There is nothing special or even pretty good about that Penn State offense. And you give up, they would have been, 24, 27 points, whatever the case would have been. And, I made the comment that if Ohio State was going to score 24 points, then it better be good enough to win the game if they're going to win that game. Like 24 better be good enough to win. If it weren't for a couple of those stops, and again, they got him. So I'm not, that's part of the game. But at the end of the day, probably a high wire act. And it's probably not going to end too well for you more often than not if you're relying on getting stops inside the 5 yard line. I thought Jim Knowles was really good. I didn't love Ohio State's defensive effort. It was really good, which sounds weird, but that's maybe probably just how much disrespect I have for the Penn State offense. I think it's just terrible. Yeah, all in all, Ryan Day deserves credit because if everybody's gonna crap on Ryan Day like they do after these losses, he deserves credit for having these guys ready to go, having these guys fired up. You can see the emotion that they played with. You could hear it in their voices after the game. Like these guys, I maybe I live in my bubble, but I guess apparently a lot of Ohio State fans were questioning Ohio State's leadership after the Nebraska game, which is laughable to me. I think it's such a cop out when people like to say, like, because they didn't play well enough to their standard that it must be a leadership issue, which is complete horseshit.
You're talking about as far as players' leadership.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So like leadership doesn't catch the football. Leadership doesn't make the right read. Like that's not how that goes. Like it's such a cop out. Ohio State didn't play well against Nebraska, period. It had nothing to do with leadership. You saw Ohio State's leadership on full display yesterday. You don't win a game like that in that environment with the way that it started without really good leadership. And that starts at the top with Ryan Day. So if you're gonna say what a lot of people say about Ryan Day after some of these games, and rightfully so, I'm not dismissing that, but if you're going to say a lot of stuff people say, then you're going to give Ryan Day his flowers for this game as well, because he had his team ready to play. And if you don't think that's a team with good leadership and that's a tough team falling down 10-0, the way that they did it too, in that atmosphere, a lot of teams would crumble. A lot of lesser, mentally tough teams would crumble in that. And so give him his flowers. And certainly people should just pile on James Franklin as well, because he just, if not now, when Ohio State was right for the picking, in my opinion, in this game. I thought Penn State, not while I don't have a ton of respect for them, I thought they had the defense to make it matter this year. It didn't. So now you're asking yourself, Penn State fans, if not now, then when? And I think probably by and large Penn State fans. Well, I heard it after the game that they're over. It's never. They say it's never, and probably maybe right. So yeah, I don't know what to say about James Franklin, but I know plenty will be being said in Pennsylvania this week. So
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I think that if you're going to continue to keep James Franklin as your coach, Penn State, then just keep expecting to, have 2 loss, maybe even 3 loss seasons. You're really never going to win the big game. You're going to be a good team in the conference, but you're never going to be elite. You're never going to probably contend for a Big Ten title, maybe once in a blue moon. You might get to the playoff once in a blue moon. I mean, who knows how much time James Franklin has left? It's not like he's an old guy by any means. Hell, he could have another, 10, 15, 20
sure.
years if they let him.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I just want to add this real quick. I made this comment back when it got announced. This expanded playoff is going to save so many average, mediocre coaches jobs because they're going to get into the playoff, this expanded playoff. Penn State's going to get in the playoff this year. They're going to be a playoff team, and
You think
James Franklin's
so?
going to get. Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless their season falls off the rails, and I don't expect it to, they're going to get in the playoff, and James Franklin's going to get credit for getting his team to the playoffs, which is absolutely true. He got him to the playoff, but in this expanded playoff, it's going to save mediocre coaches jobs because they're going to be able to add this to the resume, and the athletic departments are going to be able to justify it by saying, "Well, he got the team to the playoff," and every fan base, and every fan inside that Penn State fan base is going to say, like, "Yeah, you got him to the playoff, this expanded playoff," but this is a team that we really thought had gotten over the hump or was ready to get over the hump and go potentially contend for a national title, not slide into the back half of this expanded playoff just to go get housed by a better team, in that first round of the playoffs. So, but he won't be the only one that this saves, just because they get the credit for having a playoff team. So,
So yesterday, the Buckeyes once again offensively failed to get into the end zone on the ground. Once again, Will Howard's performance was kind of feast or famine. To you, more impressive the way that they still ran the football, even though they didn't score a rushing touchdown, or Will Howard kind of having that resolve of making mistakes, but still kind of trying to finding a way at times to overcome them. What kind of impressed you more? Was Will Howard's performance yesterday the worst of the year? I guess grade him out from your perspective.
I mean, it was the worst of the year, I guess, if you want to, put labels on it. But that's because I thought he hasn't really had a true dud other than that Nebraska game. I guess was kind of it was pretty average, but it was the worst of the year in the sense that you can't turn the ball over twice on the road at Penn State or in atmospheres equal to Penn State's atmosphere in general, and they sure as hell can't literally lead to a 14-point swing on the scoreboard. Like, I mean, quite literally, a lot of times people will say like, oh, well, if this didn't happen, then this would have been points there. And you don't really know that because it wasn't like, more had to happen in between that. These two plays were literally points on and off the board. So those can't happen from that perspective. After that happened, though, I thought he was really solid. I thought yeah, his resolve, his maturity, his experience. I thought they all shined through, and I thought he went on to play pretty well. The ball to Jeremiah Smith was an absolute dime. I don't know if Jeremiah, I don't know why he stopped running. I don't know if he got lost in
Uh,
the sun or whatever. But that was an absolute dime to Jeremiah Smith. He made the throws, he made tough runs. Certainly on that last drive, he had some big runs. I thought he really settled down and showed, again, kind of like what I said about Chip Kelly, every reason you went and got him. I thought you saw that, from the experience factor to his running ability. So I thought, it was uneven just because of the first, 15 minutes of that game, first quarter of that game. But after that, I thought, well, look at this. I'll tell you this much. So much was made about what he said after the Nebraska game about we'll see if he was good enough to go play at Penn State. He was the best quarterback in that game yesterday. Tell you that much. He was the best quarterback in that game. So, I don't know what people's standards are for him, but I know he's the best quarterback in that game yesterday. And that's partially him again. I'm just not a big Drew Aller guy. And I think Will Howard's a good quarterback, at worst, a good quarterback.
Couple of third downs there that Chip Kelly called the read option, and Will Howard kept it and got first downs on that final drive.
Yeah.
That was huge, huge.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to see out of your starting quarterback, your fifth-year experienced quarterback, a guy who has played in big games like that. Those those were huge third down keepers for Will Howard. That was the kind of like toughness, grit, and resolve that I wanted to see out of a starting quarterback. And I thought that yeah, he definitely responded well in certain instances, but there were other times. Now the Jeremiah Smith throw, yeah, Jeremiah kind of stopped, but he still caught it like it kind of in stride. And then there was that pass to Carnell Tate where Carnell Tate was wide open and
That
Will
was
Howard
bad. Yeah.
underthrew it. And then he kind of even threw it over to the right where Carnell ended up catching it out of bounds. And it's like, oh my God, if you want to be an offensive juggernaut, you gotta make
Yeah.
throws like that. I mean, you just can't not make that throw. But I guess we're all human and sometimes that's gonna happen.
Yep. No, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah. So, but overall, I think Buckeye Nation, we've got to be happy about this win. You have to be happy. Um, what do you see moving forward now? I mean, like you said, got a couple of cupcakes coming up. We got the Boilermakers this weekend, then they're at Northwestern next weekend. And then, of course, you've got the last two games of the season, which you don't feel the Hoosiers are going to be a crazy of a matchup as some people are thinking. I hope you're right, but still, they loom large. And then, of course, we know who looms at the very end of the season. But yeah, the next 2 weeks, I mean, you think at least Ohio State has an opportunity, like you said, to kind of, tune up and hopefully maybe get some guys into the game that haven't had a lot of experience. And these could be two prime matchups where maybe they get some backups back in like they were doing at the beginning of the season. Now maybe later in the season this is a great opportunity to kind of tune up some of these guys that they may need at times, later on in the season, especially if they get into the Big Ten championship game in the playoff.
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, just I mean, not even the backup guys, but just like I said earlier, get this offensive line more time. If this is your 5-man unit moving forward, every snap they take together is important to build that cohesion and that continuity that you need across any offensive line, but certainly one that's new. It's like almost like starting a season over again. You have a new offensive line, you have some new faces in there, and it's going to take some time for them to start gelling. It took this unit, it took the original unit a couple of weeks to really to start gelling a little bit. So they're going to need that. So that, and certainly as you said, the depth as well. But yeah, they have a couple of cupcakes. I'm not saying that I think Indiana's a bad football team, or I think Ohio State blows them out. I'm just saying that I think Ohio State's a couple touchdowns better than Indiana. So take that
And
for
I
what it's
think
worth.
right now, hell, a two touchdown win over Indiana, as crazy as this is to say, that would be a statement.
Yeah, sure, sure,
Seriously, I mean,
absolutely.
the way Indiana's playing right now, they trailed. Finally, they got into a game where they trailed for the first time ever. They were down, I think it was 10-0
Yeah,
to Michigan State,
you hit
and
the
they ended up
gas.
winning 47-10.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think a two touchdown win over Indiana would be making a statement. Which, like I said, it's crazy to say. But hey, before we wrap it up here, we got a couple minutes left. Anything that I forgot that you wanted to touch on?
no, not in particular. We didn't talk a ton about specific defensive efforts, but I just want to say that
Cody Simon is coming on, baby.
yeah, Cody Simon was fantastic, and I just think Cade McDonald continues to show why it's absolutely criminal that he gets as little time as he does. Those are the two things that really stood out for me defensively. So
Yeah, on that, wasn't it on Penn
the
State's?
third down play, yeah,
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 he got in there and flustered Drew Aller.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Caden McDonald needs some more time. I thought Caden Curry, he got in there a lot. He had a decent game.
yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, Cody Simon, dude, coming on. Lathan Ransom, I thought, being maybe a little bit hobbled uh,
yeah,
after sitting out last weekend against Nebraska. I thought he played pretty good game too. Hell, he was third on the team. I think he had like 7 tackles yesterday, maybe one or two for loss. So, actually, wait, here's the no, didn't have any tackles for loss, but he had a pass breakup. So, but yeah, Lathan Ransom, I thought looked pretty good after coming back from, an injury of sorts. But I know there's another guy in the secondary. He kind of lines up there next to Lathan Ransom that has just been having a hell of a year and was named to semifinals for the Thorpe Award. It's your boy.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's a more like reliable. You just never have to worry about kind of player in the country than Caleb Downs. He seems like he just cleans up so much. He's one of the most sound tacklers I can remember at Ohio State, certainly from the secondary spot as well. And he just he's just you just don't he's such a quiet player in the sense that like you don't hear a lot about him or from him because he's just always where he's supposed to be and making plays and cleaning things up. Just a lot of fun to watch Caleb Downs. I thought he was solid again, obviously yesterday, but you just notice him a handful of times throughout the game, like oh yep, there's Caleb Downs being exactly where he's supposed to be, doing exactly what he's supposed to do. Then you kind of forget about him again, which is fine because you're never saying where was Caleb Downs on that play or what was Caleb Downs doing on that play. And so that's a comfort again, one of the most reliable, consistent players in country at any position, certainly in the secondary.
I tell you what, a guy that actually had a pretty good game on the defensive line. You talked about, criminal that Caden McDonald's not getting more snaps, which I agree. But a guy that, has kind of been hit and miss throughout his career, but for some reason, it seems like when it comes to Penn State, he balls out for whatever reason. It's like Penn State is his magic elixir, and it's JT Tuimoloau out, 6 tackles, and 1.5 for loss, including teaming up with Kenyatta Jackson for a sack. So this defensive line, Dillon, uh, you know, a lot has been made about their inability to get to the quarterback. They just kind of seem to run into the offensive lineman and then just kind of hand fight a little bit, and then that's it. The play's over. Um, is is this maybe, I don't know, do you feel like this is kind of a mad scientist, evil genius kind of move by Jim Knowles, that he's telling them, hey, look, this is how we're going to approach our defensive game plan. I want you to keep things simple, but at the right time, I'm going to turn you loose. Because to me, it seems like we're seeing a little bit of a progression. It's like every game we're seeing a little bit more, from blitzing, a little bit more, maybe from a stunting aspect. It just kind of seems like, Jim Knowles is slowly moving this defense along because he knows, they all know, at least they're hoping that it's going to be a long season, and they're going to need to keep some tricks and trade secrets in their back pocket. They don't want to expose everything right away, and that this is kind of leading up to a possible grand finale. I'm getting that sense. I don't know. What do you get out of not only maybe Jim Knowles' approach, the defense in general, the defensive line? What's been kind of going, what goes through your mind after yesterday, I guess?
Well, I know for a fact that the conversations after the Oregon game were, about these very things happening, that what they were doing wasn't good enough, that Ryan Day specifically wanted to see more pressures. He alluded to as much. I've heard as much about the conversations and the nature of them. So I know for a fact that coming out of that Oregon game and going into that bye week, that there were conversations about this very thing. So it's not a coincidence that these last 2 weeks you've seen Jim Knowles be a little bit more multiple in his looks and the way he brings pressure and throwing some different things. I fully expect that to probably go away for a couple of weeks, because
Me
to your
too.
point, I don't see the value, which is going to be funny because then at some point, like, Ohio State will give up, I don't know, 20 points to Purdue, and Ohio State fans will absolutely hit the panic button again about this defense. But rest assured, what you saw these last couple of weeks, and looking to those last two games, you're going to see that. Now, look, I mentioned that I thought the defense played well, but it wasn't without issue. This issue with quarterbacks stepping up and taking off running because Ohio State's pass rushers, whether that be the guys up front or guys coming on blitzes, don't stay in their lanes. That's problematic moving forward because Drew Aller killed them yesterday doing that. It was a big part of why they were able to move the ball at all. That's an issue. It was on the first drive. Maybe the biggest reason it was a 14-play drive is because he extended 2 drives with his legs. So that's an issue. And you're going to have that if you're going to bring pressure like they had the last 2 weeks. We saw Dylan Raiola do the same thing, and I heard him like that. If you're going to bring pressure like that, it's going to happen. But it can't happen to the degree that it's happened the last 2 weeks for Ohio State. It can't be. It can't be. Hey, we're trying to bring additional pressures and give some different looks, and this is just the concession we're going to make. That can't be the case. So, but in general, no. What we saw the last 2 weeks is exactly what Ryan Day said better happen coming out of that Oregon game, and it has. I don't think that it'll look too much like it has these next 2 weeks, nor should it. But it's really encouraging that they're not willing to just stand pat like that Ryan Day said. They all agreed. I'm sure that it needed to look different, and it has to look different because that's not always the case, especially in this program. We've heard things are going to be different about some things, and they never look different. But this one was. We were told it was going to look different, and it has looked different, and the results have been mostly encouraging. So that's certainly a good sign.
Absolutely. So, any other final thoughts? Maybe that I said it a few minutes ago, and then we followed up with this.
Yeah.
I'll ask
No,
again. Any other
I
final things maybe we didn't cover that you can think of?
not really. just in general, I'm really happy for Ohio State that and for Ohio State fans that this season is still on track. I just wasn't ready to come back to Columbus yesterday and have this discourse around this team be what we all knew it would be if they were a two-loss football team, in the first couple of days of November. And with the college football playoff rankings coming out on Tuesday, that was only going to exacerbate the situation. So, I just wasn't ready for that. So I'm just excited that Ohio State has everything in front of them still. I'm excited that that Indiana game could still potentially be just massive, massive in the horseshoe. In the second to last week of the season, and frankly, I want to get back to Indy. I went to the Big Ten title game, covered the Big Ten title game my first year on the beat in 2019. Just assumed because before that, as a fan, my dad and I had gone to every one they'd been in before that. So just assume like this is my right. Now that I'm a beat, I'm just going to do this every year. Go cover Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. I haven't been back since. They went the following year, but it was a COVID year, and I didn't go. And they haven't been back there. They haven't been back in the game since. So frankly, I just want to get back to Indy. So I'm excited that that part is still on the table, where it wouldn't have been had they, not found a way to win that game. Well, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be on the table, but it would have been unlikely had they not won that game yesterday. So I'm excited for that as well. Just excited. I was down on the situation earlier this week. A lot of people call me negative Nancy and this and whatnot, which frankly, being critical of a team isn't negative, but some people perceive it that way, and that's fine. I'm not going to tell anybody how to be a fan, but I wasn't being a negative Nancy. I was just speaking my mind about what I think is going to happen, and I was wrong on one big aspect of that, and fine. But in general, just excited, reinvigorated that they have an offensive line that again, I'm not going to sit here and say it's national championship caliber, but I think it can be serviceable. And if you give them a serviceable offensive line with those two running backs and those receivers on the outside, then you're back in business offensively. So I'm excited about that.
Do you think Ohio State needs to come out and just pound Purdue and Northwestern the next 2 weeks to give Buckeye Nation some confidence and give even fans around the college football landscape kind of a thought like, whoa, okay, this Ohio State team's for real. And if we see Ohio State come out and, win by a touchdown, 10 points over Northwestern, Purdue, or maybe
Yeah.
even like two touchdowns, they only win the game by two touchdowns or 17 points. I mean, do they need to come out and just absolutely throttle Purdue and Northwestern to just kind of give Buckeye Nation and college football fans something to think about?
Well, they need to from the fan sense. Look, to be frank, nobody inside the Woody Hayes gives a shit about what Ohio State fans think about the performance. So from the fan base perspective, from our perspective, I don't want to have to hear about it if Ohio State doesn't go out and blow probably the worst Purdue team I've seen in I don't know, maybe my life. If they don't beat them by, 24, 30 points at least, yeah, then yeah, I don't want to hear about it. Ohio State fans aren't going to want to see that. It's going to be more frustrating, annoying conversations from some people in the fan base. But I mean, Ohio State doesn't need to do it to show anything to Buckeye Nation. I don't think that they care much about what that prevailing opinion is on a performance. But for themselves though, too, I mean, it would be disappointing to say the least if internally in the Woody if they follow up such an emotional big performance and a win over Penn State with a lackluster dud and a uninspiring win over a terrible Purdue team or a bad Northwestern team. That from that aspect it would be very disappointing. But yeah, I don't think they much care what the opinion outside of the Woody is on those performances. So
I think though it would be reinforcing or something, if you will, to
yeah,
see Ohio State come out and blow the doors off of those two teams that they should, you would theoretically think they're going to be, like 4 touchdown,
yeah,
maybe 5 touchdown
oh,
favorites
five,
over,
yeah, yeah.
So if they do that, I think that they are going to show Buckeye Nation and they are going to show college football fans that, hey, Ohio State's for real and they can legitimately compete. But if they don't, does that mean that they can't? I don't think so. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I still think that even if we watch them, win by a couple of touchdowns or something goofy, um, that this is still a team that can contend, but other people would probably disagree with that. They have to go out and they have to win 56-7, 56-0, or else
Right.
if they don't, they're just another stupid soft Ryan Day coach team, and he ain't the answer, and
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, sir. Anything else?
Nope. That's all I have, man.
That's all you got. That's all I got. That's all we got, folks. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. Once again, this has been another Columbus Wired Buckeye post-game recap. I'm Andy Evans from Columbus Wired. You can slash me on the X at Andy's Wired. Our boy Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette. Where can they slash you at, bro? Not physically, literally see you out in public and go, I disagree with the negativity that I heard from you. I am literally going to slash you on your X, but hit you up on that social.
I'm always down for a fight, first of all. And second of all, they can catch me at Dillon Davis 56, or they can catch me outside for that matter.
Catch you outside.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Dillon Davis 56. So on Twitter, on the X. But I appreciate you having me. Always happy to join you. Talk Buckeye football. This is certainly a lot better of a day to talk Buckeye football than it was last week. Or the week before that. So
it was. Anytime that you get a huge win over a stupid, smelly feline team, not smelly rodents, but smelly felines, it's definitely a good day. So get out of here, man. Go run the errands with the wifey. Yep. I'm going to do my thing. And until the next time, folks, and probably see this guy down at the Woody on a Wednesday.
I'll talk to you later.
For a Wednesday at the Woody. So,
yes, sir. All right, man. Peace.
See ya.